Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
As a sports fan, I have to confess. Sometimes the game gets kind of boring. That's when I unfold my Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7 and use multi-window viewing on its large screen. Boring game? I'm checking out my fantasy baseball league at the same time. Score still 1-0? I'm replying to emails in the other window, scoring points with the boss. Semifinals finally getting exciting? I'm buying tickets to the finals and booking my flights. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
If you thought goldenly breaded McDonald's chicken couldn't get more golden, think Golder, because new sweet and smoky special edition gold sauce is here. Made for your chicken favorites at participating McDonald's for a limited time.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there's one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
Hey, thanks for listening to Reversing Climate Change. I'm your host, Ross Kenyon. Before we get going, I'd love to tell you a little bit about our sponsors. They make the show possible. I would love it if you could listen for just a minute while I tell you about Philip Lee, LLP, and Arbonics. If you work in carbon removal, you very well may have come across Philip Lee LLP's work. I originally saw Philip Lee give a presentation about some of the common provisions within offtake agreements, and I was impressed by the quality of their scholarship and their work, and I'm happy that we were able to stay in touch and finally do this together. I think the law is an underrepresented part of what happens within carbon removal. We assume it's the background, we assume it's the mechanics. It actually takes a very smart and creative person to be a good lawyer. I think if you've ever had a bad lawyer, you know that there's quite a big difference between a good and a bad lawyer. And what's good about Philip Lee, beyond the good experience that I've had personally, is that they're also just the largest legal team dedicated to the financing and development of carbon projects globally. They actually were awarded Environmental Finance's VCM Law Firm of the Year for each of the last 2 previous years. And they have offices in the US, Europe, and the UK. If you have business law needs around nature-based carbon projects or engineered ones, if you're working with sustainable aviation fuels and the integration with CORSIA, anything to do with the VCM generally, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, the CRCF that's coming out of the EU now, get in touch with Philip Lee. If you're working in this space, you really do need a good eye to the law. These projects need legal care. There's a lot of structuring that takes place. It's really not turnkey at this point still. And there's a lot more innovation and creativity that's going to be needed to make sure that the legal infrastructure that supports carbon removal is there. So, link is in the show notes. Go check out Philip Lee. Our other sponsors are Arbonics. Arbonics is great. They've been on the podcast before. I did a show with Lizette Louique, which I'll link to in the show notes too if you want to go listen to that show I did with Lizette. Arbonics is working on forestry in the Baltic states of Europe. Europe used to be much more heavily forested. The great majority of forestry projects take place in the global south, which is generally a good thing, but we also do need forestry to take place in the EU and in Europe as well. Arbonics has put out some great research recently about the state of afforestation projects, about the bottlenecks in the industry, why the high quality credits are selling out far ahead of issuance, what that means for people who want to be buying carbon removal credits for forestry but cannot. It's a really important set of questions that Arbonics addresses with grace. I would recommend you checking out their work and also just checking out Arbonics in general. If you want to support forestry, give Arbonics a look. Link is in the show notes there. Thanks for listening, and now I will go into the show itself. Thanks for your time. Here it is. Hey, thanks for listening to the Reversing Climate Change podcast. I'm Ross Kenyon. I'm a carbon removal entrepreneur. Before I tell you about today's guest, if I could please ask you to open your podcast app right now. You hopefully haven't started washing the dishes yet. You're just putting soap on the sponge. You haven't. Okay, you have a quick brief moment before you get into podcast listening, disassociating mode. And I want to capture you now. Open up that podcast app. 5 stars on Spotify, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Write a quick review on Apple Podcasts if your hands aren't soapy already. Just say, I love this show. It's weird in exactly the ways that I like. And I would be super grateful. There's also an option to become a paid subscriber for $5 a month that gets rid of all of the programmatic ads from Spotify. You get bonus content and you get to support the show. It's great for so many reasons and very much noticed and appreciated by me. Today's show is with Ariella Cook-Shonkoff. Ariella wrote a really interesting book called Raising Anti-Doomers: How to Bring Up Resilient Kids Through Climate Change and Tumultuous Times. Oh, if you work in climate, carbon removal, if you just care about it, it's a difficult space to remain resilient in the face of. If one doesn't have a good grip on one's emotions, I think there's a real risk of being a difficult colleague, a difficult spouse, a difficult parent, and you deserve better than that. Like, you only get one life. Therapy can be a big part of what it means to deal with a world that is, to put it lightly, imperfect. Much of the conversation and advice that is given regarding emotions is that you're not necessarily meant to allow yourself to be ruled by emotions, but you're also not supposed to be so stoic that you can't feel them. The goal is to sit with it. It's supposed to feel the way that it feels. And your goal for feeling a feeling is to not run through it into the next thing, not to distract yourself with the next prestige drama or podcast. This doesn't apply if you're listening to my podcast. That's psychologically approved. I will make an exception for this specific episode. You're meant to sit with it and feel it. And it's not always going to feel great. And that's okay. The expectation that feelings should always feel good is a weird one. I'm not even sure where we got that idea, because basically anyone who works on feelings to any capacity, as far as I know, will tell you that's not a reasonable assumption at all and is not actually good for us to do. The second half of the conversation deals with how those lessons apply to parenthood. I hope you enjoy. That's enough of an intro. Thanks for listening, and here is today's show. Ariella, thanks for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you. We haven't done a show quite on this topic yet. And look, it's about raising anti-doomer kids, but I'm basically getting a free therapy session out of you today for me, I think. I think a lot of the advice in the book probably equally applies to people listening who, I imagine many of them are adults and some portion of them are parents. Where do we even start with a topic like this? If you could only give someone one nugget, and granted you wrote a whole book about it, how do you come to grips with the impending sense of doom around climate, ecology, toxicity, any and all of those things?
I think you don't dive headfirst into it, and you don't run, fleeing like madly away. The work is in kind of this cultivating of your ability to tolerate some distressing news, right? Or distressing facts. This is where we're at. And trying your best to, develop your ability to tolerate, be with your emotions, to, find supports that are helpful for you, if it's social supports or your own kind of strategies for calming your nervous system, right? So that would be the nugget, is this, I call it the sweet spot of engagement. So, or the anti-doomer sweet spot, so that you're not going and veering off in either direction too much.
I think I probably could have substituted in there any traumatic or difficult subject area, and you probably could have said the same thing. I associate what you said as very much a mainline therapeutic culture response, which is that You're not meant to run away from it. You're not supposed to be engulfed by it. You're supposed to sit with it, though.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough, Ross.
It's not criticism. I think it's good. It's very sensible advice.
Yeah. No, I think, but I think it's easier said than done. And so,
Yes.
I mean, that was like the overview, but that's the point of the book, is to give, lots of tools for how the heck do you do this? But the thing is we know, in therapy and many different, approaches to therapy, that there are ways that we can work with the body and the nervous system. I think that is the emphasis a lot in my book. Work with creativity, the nervous system, with the natural world. Some with the thoughts, some with cognition, but like there's definitely a more holistic emphasis in the book of how do you kind of widen this sweet spot. I mean, and to use therapist-y language, the window of tolerance, right? Which you may or may not be familiar with, but you tell me.
There's a preconception, I think, with therapy, maybe not for those who have spent time in it, but that it is a heavily cognitive type of work. I think this probably goes back to classical psychoanalysis and laying on the couch, and people are still somehow stuck in that. But I think much of therapy is actually about getting people out of their head and into their bodies, because culturally, it seems like we still live pretty much up there and neglect everything below the head.
Like, you mean that there's this tendency, like, okay, therapy happens up in this region, the head, in the prefrontal cortex, that we have to like analyze and sift through and explain. There's been a shift. I think there's really been a shift in more cognitive-based therapies or psychoanalysis to this kind of more somatic orientation. I think of Peter Levine, some of his research on somatic experiencing and all the different, there's other orientations as well. And so there was a shift to more this idea that, the body houses, emotions are embedded in the body, in the nervous system and the trauma response, and it's actually activated all the time. And we have them on smaller scales, right? Like if we stop short and, don't want to crash into the car in front of us, let alone like some more major stuff if we're afraid for our safety or safety of others. And so, I do think that there's been a shift in that direction. And I think that, for me and my work, I mean, I can just speak to, there's a lot of body-based work. I mean, I'm integrative, so we're also talking through, but sometimes when I'm meeting with clients in my office, it's making suggestions of like, maybe we do less of this, like talking brain to brain, and maybe we take a little detour, and maybe, I'm an art therapist, so there's art supplies. And maybe, and so I invite my clients, and sometimes I'll even say, because there can be nerves around it. Like, I don't know, this is new for me. I don't know. Just like to really demystify it and open it up so that it feels accessible, because it's just a tool for growth, for healing, for, grappling with difficult emotions, right? And so anyway, just to say that, I do think there's been a shift more in this direction. And I'll add on in the climate psychology field, one of the things I'm appreciating is how different, there's different orientations like melding together and shaping the field. And it's been interesting to witness. So you have, different evidence-based, orientations, or, it could be mind or body-based, orientations. And there's kind of trying to figure out some of the best ways to support people in coping with, climate distress.
If someone comes in and they have climate anxiety, I think one listening might think that the way to work through climate anxiety is to do something that is talk oriented, and that you're going to untangle this knot in your brain. And how does it work if you are doing art at the same time, or you're doing art instead of verbalizing everything? Like, does the emotion get processed in the same way? Is it better somehow? Like, why do we think everything has to pass through the linguistic part of our brain. Is that just me, by the way? Like, I think that way. I know it's not true, but it's like in my head.
Is it just you that tends in that direction?
Well, I have a podcast, so like, yeah, I process things verbally. Yeah. This is what I do. But I also know that it's not the only way, but I privilege it to such a high extent.
No, I feel like you're the norm, like, and in terms of, even people I meet with, absolutely. I think there's comfort in that, and people are used to that. So the typical client that comes in is like, just like you, Ross, right? They're like ready to talk. And we might start there. I mean, that's that's kind of where, I might start a session, but there comes a point where I might say, hey, you're feeling some big feelings about this. How would it feel to, maybe make a little art around it or something? And that could be the first session, or it might like lead up to that, the next session. But what happens is there's like a toggling between the two. So, if you're all up in your head and you're all, kind of intellectualizing things, they're actually not necessarily tapping down into your deeper emotions. In fact, you can stay up in like the soft denial of intellectualizing, right? And not, coming down and really feeling what's going on in my body. Oh my God. And it's those emotions that can lead to actual action. There's studies that show, right, eco-anxiety can be correlated with, or is correlated with, taking more action and doing something about it. And so there's a missed opportunity if we stay up in our minds, trying to make sense of everything versus coming down. And so that's what I'm doing with, and I can tell you when I sit with a client and I'm thinking about, okay, I had a client draw his, it was like his emotional soup that had to do with climate distress. And it was, fascinating. I'm sitting there, and then at the end, I kind of checked in about how he felt in creating, and while creating, what emotions came up. And then you even look at this separate, it's like a separate entity from you. It's come out of you, but there's a separation, and there's an opportunity to see things differently and see the and kind of talk through metaphors. So I'll often explore the art with my client, and with that client I did, looking at this kind of soup and hearing his story about it. And it deepens the work in my humble opinion, this is the work I do. So of course I'm biased. Yeah.
As a layperson, I think about something like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, as a set of techniques where if you're examining your beliefs and feeling like, is this truthful? Like, is this likely to happen? Do I have anxiety about something that doesn't make sense? And like playing it through your head and writing out how this might be, and would it actually be as bad as I think? Interrogating your feelings in this way. How does something like that work when the sources of anxiety are real and potentially as bad or worse than you think? Like, if you think climate is going to be an area that's going to cause much grief this century and beyond, it almost seems like some of those techniques, like, do they even still work? What do you do to manage, grief ahead of time, and just like, what do I do with my family, and where should I live, and questions like that?
You just tagged on a lot of questions at the end of that one, but I think that you were talking at the beginning about reality testing, and like, can you say, like, can we test like this thing? Is it really going to be that bad? And, whatever that may be. But as you say, in the case of climate change, it really is that bad. And so did those tools work? I mean, I think a lot of folks come in here, or the folks that I meet that are coming in with those challenges, it's about validation of their feelings, of their experience. Like someone said, I just want to know I'm not crazy. I can't talk about this with my other therapist. I mean, that's interesting. Not all therapists, so I have this more climate aware orientation, and not all therapists are there or have done the work or, are expanding that part of their practice.
How do you manage feelings around climate when they're not like, what happens if I wear the green shirt and everyone thinks I'm the biggest idiot around, and you're like, well, that's clearly like you're overreacting, or like, well, let's contextualize this differently, or think about likelihoods. What if it is just like bad things are coming and I feel bad about it? I
mean, I think one of the interesting, the Yale Climate Center Communication, what is it? Yale Center for Climate Communication, has shown that there's increasing numbers of alarmed folks, Americans. Like the alarmed segment has increased, or, the concerned segments have increased. And so we're actually, many of us are concerned, but there's this thinking of like, well, if other people aren't talking about it, and so I'm not going to talk about it either. So we're not talking about all that we're really feeling at the side. And so you hear, when you say that, it's like, it's really understandable. Yeah, we're, and it's like human nature. I think this to look around and take cues from social cues and stuff, but it's not going to get, how do we move the dial that way if we're all kind of agonizing within ourselves, but we're not able to connect and even just be real. And so I think I like Katharine Hayhoe's work around the climate, fostering climate communications. I'm like, you don't even have to use that word. I mean, she talked a little bit about how that word is triggering, climate. And can be, politically, it's very much a political word. And so can you talk about, well, God, it's dry and it's, or it's been, gosh, the rains are really affecting, this or that, or this is scary. We're having hurricanes every season. Can you have conversations, right? About what's happening without using language, that could be potentially, create more divides than bring people together. And ultimately, if we come together and just admit, we're all pretty, many of us, and if you look at the global statistics, it's even higher as to how many people are alarmed, concerned, and about climate change. And so we're all feeling that, or a majority of us are, right? But we're just not talking about it.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contrast. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan. $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
I'm someone prone to peer into the abyss, and I find it to be useful sometimes, but I think I stay there a bit too long. And I think the climate movement in general has a lot of toxic positivity in it. I think a lot of that is related to the people who are working to commercialize technology. Do you remember when Bernie had already deeply lost the Democratic primary, and there was this is how Bernie can still win, and it became increasingly deranged as it became less and less likely. The math doesn't even make sense anymore. It's not going to happen. And sometimes climate stuff feels like that, where I'm like, are we gonna figure this out in time? Because we were already, the model that I was using for it was the Indiana Jones, the wall's coming down, he grabs his hat, and basically comes down right about to crush his arm. We're barely made it. And now we're rolling back policies. We're losing years and years here, and I'm pretty freaked out. I'm still doing the work, and having that amount of agency does make me feel better. To what degree that it's a purely personal therapeutic benefit rather than a societal benefit, open question, because we also just may not actually pull this off. We might be living in a climate change world that's really chaotic. And I just bounce between those kind of two things, where I'm involved in my work, having agency and feeling productive and helpful for everyone. And then occasionally I'll read something or look at something and be do we need to move? Where is the safest place in the world in the coming decades? Like institutionally, which countries are going to survive and which ones are not going to do so well? Give me some advice. Like, how do I deal with that?
I actually want to, maybe this sounds funny, but I want to commend you because I actually feel like even if
I'm not able to do that, actually. Maybe let's stay with that.
I'll join the line. But you're not, you said you have some like maybe tendencies to get like, spiral down, but you don't stay there. You're not stuck there. You're not in that rigid mindset of like, you've given up and you've written things up, like, things off and you're going to go create a bunker, for your family somewhere, and not run your podcast. So, I actually think that, I think that toggling between the states of like, this is how the world is. And I want it to be, like, what can we do to improve things, get the climate change movement, actually moving forward, being, efficiently making change. How can we get the government to act or world governments to act, but certainly our own, which is now moving in the opposite direction. So you're asking those questions periodically. I think that keeps you on the edge. And then you kind of are able to, you bring whatever into your podcast that you bring. But then I'm guessing you find some way to like, what are you doing? Maybe I put this on you, or I can also share. But like, there's tools you're doing to stay regulated, to stay hopeful, to, I like to think of it as the North Star, hope as the North Star. And and just reorienting to it over and over again, no matter what's going on, so that we don't give up. But yeah, I think you're doing a good job.
Oh, that's nice to hear. The biggest psychological or maybe spiritual question that I have with regard to this is I end up feeling some amount of pre-panic or thinking of which parts of the world are going to be safest. Like it's a big expense and logistically very difficult to move kids and family and change professional licensure and do these things. And you're like, where actually should we go? But then I end up feeling some amount of guilt to it too, where like, how would I feel if I, let's just pretend I'm right. It's going to be bad enough where those concerns are very valid. And I would hate to be proven right about that. How would I feel if I ended up in the gated community before the walls came up and everything became really bad? Is my job to look after my family and put them somewhere safe? Or should I be a humane voice inside of a community that's collapsing or changing? Or however bad that, in this scenario, we're imagining it's bad. Like, what's actually the role of someone like me? I don't know that either psychologically or spiritually or both, the role is just escape. But I do toy with feelings of escape. How healthy or unhelpful or whatever, what is it? How should I contextualize that?
I appreciate this question and your honesty about it. And I guess what? I felt the same way before. And I wrote about this in an article. About, should we get in an airplane and fly out of the area? Because wildfires are bad, when I was experiencing my own eco-anxiety. So I guess what I want to say is it's a really natural human response. It's the reactive response that we feel under threat. So it's maybe it's the flight, you could call it, rather than staying and fighting. And we have you're talking about the added the addition of a family, to look after your kids, or child. I don't know if you have how many kids you have. Your job as parent is to protect them, right? And so it's a very natural response. And it's like, again, I know this is annoying, but staying with it, right? You don't always give in to that first impulse, because then we're just, you want to find, actually, this is another little therapy model that might be helpful. What's called Wise Mind. Do you know this one? Dialectical behavior therapy.
I know about DBT, but I don't know about this Wise Mind.
It is, it's DBT. It's reason, rational thought and emotion. And imagine a Venn diagram, and they're overlapping. And that little overlap is called wise mind. So that means you are thinking rationally and you're feeling your feelings. And it's this little sweet spot, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I think that if you flee, maybe, perhaps you're giving into your fear, right? The adrenaline or and so maybe that's not as helpful. And so, but the work you're doing sounds a lot like wise mind work, where you feel, and you're somebody, I don't know, and I'm using you, I hope it's okay. I'm like shining the light back on you, but you have connection to your range of feelings, it sounds like, to do with what's happening. You're not numbed out. You're feeling the feelings. And then there you are also taking action and doing something. You have a podcast and you might be doing other work. I don't know. But that's exactly like channeling anxiety or distress into action, right? Is hope. That in itself is hope. And that models for your child, something that can be done, right? What can be done. And if everyone's doing that, and there's, or like many people are doing that, then we have a stronger social movement in that direction. Collective action. So, yeah.
So the good thing about my big hodgepodge of feelings is that I'm feeling them, exploring them. Sometimes they are coming out more strongly. Other times I don't feel the need to dwell on them so much. And somehow that all means that by miraculous therapy math, I ended up being a well-adjusted person. No one's ever accused me of that. How did you conjure this result?
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. I'm not making this up. I think you're, I'm thinking now about the Dr. Ariella Johnson's climate identity. Oh gosh, climate.
Like all we can save and the.
But she just, anyway, it's like this, like another Venn diagram, but it's climate action.
Was it the Ikigai thing that I see her? Oh.
It's like a way of configuring like what to do when people are like at a loss, and don't have direction and they feel like bowled over emotionally and like I should do something, I want to do something, but what do I do? And so examining your skill set, talents, maybe what you want to do, or where you and then kind of coming up with a direction that and then being able to take action and move forward and have an identity so that you can actually sustainably engage in climate work. And, of course it's it's a lifelong endeavor that will take, some tempering and stuff like that or modulating, but it gives you the direction. Mm-hmm. So I think you're there. So congratulations. But but I want to validate that part of you. That's like, but what do I do about the doomer feelings? And they're still there. I think that, on a spiritual level or existential level, like, that is life. And it happens to be this unique, existential threat that is climate change.
Yeah, I feel like denying that has often felt worse than allowing yourself to stare into this and feel the feeling of, this work may come to naught. It may be day late and $1 short and really bad things happen and we could have avoided it had we all acted sooner, but we didn't. And I'm concerned by that. But then I'll see posts on LinkedIn sometimes that will be very much like, making it inappropriate to feel that feeling or somehow saying that it's a betrayal to indulge in any sort of feelings of calamity. And I don't like that. I don't think that's a good take. I don't even think it makes us better at our work either. It's good to know the stakes of what we're doing. And in some ways I find it to be energizing.
Yeah. Where did you hear that? Like not to indulge any of that?
A lot of the takes that do well on LinkedIn tend to be toxically positive in a way that they'll say we're still making amazing progress. Things are still somehow great. This is like the Bernie can still win thing. I'm like, it's like fine. Progress is still happening, but
right.
I don't know. Not enough to solve all of my concerns, really. But then it like kind of shames you out of being like, this isn't enough for me. I don't think this is good enough.
I totally understand that. I guess and maybe just to reorient to the therapy world for a second, like one of the most, I think, helpful supports there are these climate cafes, which are these. Have you heard of these climate cafes?
I know about death cafes, but I imagine they're similar.
Comes out of death cafes. Okay, so anyway, I think they started in the UK and have made their way. We have an affiliation with Climate Psychology Alliance there, and then there's Climate Psychology Alliance North America here, which I'm part of. But just that there's a space, a climate cafe is off. There can be virtual, they can be in person, and there's a facilitator, and it's to hold space for people's, real feelings, their grief, their sadness, their anger, their fears, whatever, even moments of joy or like whatever comes up is welcome. And then there's a holding tank and space for it to really validate that. Because you're right, like toxic positivity, it makes me think of the hopium, which I mentioned in the book. It's going to be fine. Someone's going to, work it out and it'll all be okay. Okay. That's also denial. There has to be, I think, 1 foot in and 1 foot out of this whole thing. So that, on a personal level, 1 foot into the muck of the emotions, 1 foot grounded in reality.
I imagine some part of your work is probably about disappointment with family members in that similar way. What do you advise in cases like that?
I think we have to, this is a really challenging time to even have a sense of, reality because of what's happened in, with these alternative facts and, news sources, which are not based in fact and reality. It's very confusing. And so it's actually easier than one might think, to get caught up in it. And so I think it's holding a little bit of grace for that. And then, and I think it's also, you don't want to cut these people out of your life. If we start doing that, like this is family. So at the end of the day, can there be ways to find common ground, to maybe, create safety for a conversation, but where maybe there's some ground rules of like not taking it, okay, let's not talk, we don't have to use climate change, but let's talk about how we're feeling. Because there could be shared experiences there. Like I'm kind of freaked out, or in this case, it sounded like, okay, maybe this is great. But I think that there's got to be some, finding common ground and some attempt to stay connected and repair.
Easier advice to say than to take, maybe. It's like hard to make. Now I have to have a saint's patience, essentially. Now it just falls into a lacuna where it's like, well, there's no script for this. So anyway, back to the talking point that was on TV recently. You're like, oh. And I have to keep dealing with this person. I don't know. That's been a hard one. I think also just part of therapy and maturity too is recognizing that older family members and aunts and uncles and parents are like, they never had that great of a sense of control. They never had as much of a grip on living life as maybe it looked like when you were a child. And then you grow up and realize like the world is run by people who have no clue what they're doing. And it's like, it barely works at all. And it's a sort of a miracle that things do kind of work at all. And that's been I imagine that's a fairly universal lesson of maturity. It doesn't necessarily always feel good either. And you aspire to, okay, I'm not going to fall into the same traps of delusion and self-deception that these people clearly have, and I can see more clearly. I'm sure I've got those too, though. I'm sure my kids will eventually look and be like, God, Dad has really had a terrible blind spot with this. So disappointing.
It's interesting. I actually talk a lot about this in the book and about relating to Greta Thunberg, because I felt like that when I'm not the same, but like I had my version of that when I was, young. And so there is this reckoning of like, and what the heck are the adults doing? Why don't they care more? That's how I felt. Why don't they care more? We recycled and we did the things, but why aren't they making this their passion and their life's work? And then, like you say, you enjoy it. It's like you come into the adult world and it's a mess, but I mean, particularly right now it feels more chaotic than, it's always been problematic in different ways, but this is pretty chaotic, our current climate here, political climate.
I have some sympathy for it too. I had a potential opportunity to commercialize some tech that is what is euphemistically deemed dual use. Do you know about any stuff like this? Is this?
No, I'd love to hear though.
It's it can be used in lots of ways. Dual use often means it's like military as well, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I see. Mm-hmm.
So there's this tech that it was a sort of like drone adjacent technology. I'm like, oh, this would be really great because it would allow for a lot of GIS, like spatial informational systems to be improved. It'll improve uptime of drones. Everyone obviously right now is watching Ukraine and how drone warfare and autonomous swarms are going to take place. And like the next war is going to look a lot like Ukraine, but be much deadlier. It'll be like watching the Crimean War, and then the Civil War that came afterwards was much worse and expanded on those tactics and that tech. This sort of like more robust offering that was prestigious, like cool, but also how badly do I need the money? And there are certainly cases where people will make the decision of, like almost no matter what else, like I just need to do this. So if it's going to be dual use and some of that use is not going to be necessarily what I care about, whatever, my family needs to stay in their house and be able to eat. And that's like the most charitable interpretation of former generations not caring that much about the earth or something like that. Like their concerns were making sure their family was taken care of in a more immediate way and that they have paid labor and they're able to be secure. And I feel that too, which is a way of saying that we're back in that complexity zone here too, where it's like, cool, like I'm sitting with it. Sometimes it feels bad. Sometimes you make a compromise, whatever. I have sympathy for people who did not take the more abstract, high-minded way in the past. Are you doing that now? Like, do you take every single high road option presented to you? Probably not.
Is that to me?
Yeah, well, it's kind of to anyone. I'll go first. Like, no, I do not do that.
I don't think I wouldn't want to, I think people need to make the best choices, decisions for themselves. So and everyone has different perspectives and ways of seeing things and then different circumstances. So, but I guess the one thing that what popped up for me was values, the importance of aligning with values and what you were saying and like how you feel icky if you're not doing that. And so there's more of that emotional ambiguity or like discomfort. But then all you can do is your best to follow those but keep coming back to those because we all have the, family values, cultural values, personal values. And if that can be our anchor, going to help guide us. And even if it doesn't affect every decision that we make or we can't stay true to them.
Most of these questions have dealt with, granted, if you're a youth, oh God, I sound old.
Young person.
If you're a young person listening, then this applies to you because you're making decisions basically for yourself. I imagine most people listening are adults making decisions for themselves. But this changes quite a lot when you're responsible for the upbringing of young people. Do the lessons that we've talked about already, does that neatly apply on a one-to-one basis for like what you transmitted to me? Should that be transmitted to children? Is there some additional steps or ways of thinking? Like how should we be preparing children for this world?
I suppose it is similar in some ways, which it's always like this magic middle, because I talk in the book about finding the right Goldilocks, porridge for your child. So yes, like it depends on maybe their age or their developmental stage or what they're going through. Like, life is stressful on the micro level. Like, you go to school, you might have some trouble, with a certain subject or a certain classmate, or, there could be all sorts of pressures, as a child. So there's enough going on. I think that, just finding the right, like as a parent, finding the right time to maybe talk to your child and the right messaging. And so that is there's no one size fits all for that. What I use to make it really simple is the 3 V's: voice, validate, and vision. And maybe this is like the most actionable, advice I could give, which is, and none of it's, like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that, like brand new, but it's just an easy way to think about it. So voice is like really providing opportunities for your child to voice, concerns. And that might be even asking a direct question, because sometimes parents are afraid of that. But like, hey, what have you studied about climate change at all at school? That's okay to ask, right? You can ask the question, and then there's opportunity to talk afterwards. Versus maybe they're afraid to mention it to their parent, right? To bring it up at all, and they heard some scary stuff at school, which has been the case from my experience. So that's voice, is creating a safe space for kids to talk. And then validate would be, right, validating their real feelings and not trying to fix or solve problems, which parents often jump into. And I'm guilty, by the way, of all of this. But like just saying, yeah, it is scary. But, the nice thing about that is I'm borrowing Harriet Sugarman's work, which is empowerment points. So if there's something scary, you can also say, hey, you know what? Like there's also some stuff that we can look at, some positive news, or which is totally out there. There's a lot of wonderful projects, developments in the environmental world that just don't get as much attention because they're not in the mainstream media outlets as much. But sharing those empowerment points with kids can kind of help balance, if they're in a very low place, some hope. And the last V would be vision, which is like agency, really, and supporting, your kid in like developing, a pathway to like take action or do something that feels good to them, because they're, and you could do that. It could be like something that you do as a family. It could be going to a protest. It could be picking up, trash at the local park, whatever. But yeah, so that's one way to look at that.
I have a question about the validation step. My child before has said something like, I'm scared of this. And I know the correct response is not invalidation. Well, there's no reason to be afraid of that, or like that's for babies. That's sort of like a really pathologizing, terrible way to respond to something like that. But if it's more something like, well, yeah, I'm not scared of spiders. Or like, oh yeah, I'm scared of spiders too. Do kids feel that as being like, oh God, there's no one at the helm, like, even my dad's scared of that? Or is that sort of like, oh, this is a human, like, interesting. Like, he also has a feeling that is similar to mine. Like, how does a kid experience that?
I think either. I think sometimes kids just like to be like, know that they're not alone and know that there's nothing, it's normal or something like that. And so it can feel good. Because you could always say like, if you have you're co-parenting with a partner, like, well, sometimes I have, mommy or whoever, daddy, whatever it is, like help with the spiders since that I'm scared of those or something, so, I don't think there's I don't think that's a wrong answer for that question. I think that if your feelings are really intense and like coming out like, oh my God, I'm so freaked out. And maybe it's a bigger scale than a spider. And we're talking about climate change again. And those feelings are like coming off you, like, or your child can sense that, then that can really have implications for them, where they absorb, the kind of trickle down emotions from the parents, and then might be acting out or internalizing, because they don't know what to do with the excess of emotions, and they're not feeling as safe at home. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've experimented with this too, where my upbringing was much more, I doubt I am alone in having this family of origin experience, but feeling emotions really strongly was not a thing that we did as much. And so if I'm grieving or crying or upset about something, I try not to run from the room or hide it. And even if I'm a little uncomfortable with it, I try to just like, you know what, you're just going to be brave and you're just going to, some water's going to leave your eyes and that's fine. And it's better to see your dad cry than not. But I've also, it's funny, like seeing that happen though, it hasn't necessarily had the reaction of like, oh, my dad's an emotionally like feeling person. Or like, is this scary? Why is my dad's like really upset? Is this safe? Is an adult in control right now or not really? And I feel like I've experienced that more in that latter kind of way. I'm not sure how to deal with that. And this obviously applies to climate here too, because how could you not have some climate grief? But what do I do with that?
I wonder how you kind of go where you go from there, because like if you say something like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like some big feelings here, how does that affect you when daddy has these feelings or shows these feelings? Like if you say like, how do you feel about that? Or I think it also could be, you could also pause and say, listen, I want to talk to you about this more, but I just need to take like a 5-minute break and I'll be back. And then, you could come back and pick up the conversation and, again, just like normalize because emotions are normal and we all feel them. It's part of being human and like what good modeling. And so you're saying he might feel like there's no one at the helm. There's no like, like is that's the kind of feeling? Yeah. And so,
I get the feeling there's like like a retreat. There isn't like I'm going to sit here. It's more just like, okay, well, look at the time. Like I should go play with my toys now. I'm like, okay.
But you're modeling. That would be a great example of modeling. I got to just take a minute, take a beat, come back, be like, I had some big feelings, but I'm fine. I'm fine now. Daddy's back. We're, doing, back in the helm. So, like something like that can work well.
But I imagine for a lot of parents, they probably are dealing with like, there's actually not a great solution. We're working on it. It's an underdog kind of story right now. We're really trying, or certain people on the planet are really trying and others don't care or actively hindering it. And I also feel really uncomfortable and sad about the direction and what kind of world that we're leaving you. Is that good for kids to hear something like that? Does that make them feel, it sounds validating if they're concerned by it. It can also freak them out if done incorrectly. I think wisdom of knowing how to do this is probably really important.
There's some element of like, I don't want to cookie cutter this here. And I want to be, but I would always, one thing I always say is start really small and like simple. And it's almost like you're just like seeing, you're taking, litmus test to see like, where's your child at with this information? And then you know what to do next from there. Like if it's in a way, because, it might be like, that's enough for now. You might have this, you're going to really pay attention to his cues, his signals, his nonverbal, how to even ask him, like, what do you think of that? And then, if, you could share a little bit more. Do you want to hear more or not really? And maybe we'll talk about this another time, but like, you really don't, I think that the mistake that parents can make, is too much too fast, like that can really scare and overwhelm kids. Feeling like you need to rattle off like the state of the world to, just put yourself too. And you're like, I do this sometimes. I'm like, gosh, when I was, 9, did I need to know everything about like, no, I didn't, so you start small and you can build up rather than like, once it's out, it's out. And of course, you only have so much control because there's internet and the teenagers get into all sorts of other things. Have access to information in different ways or through their peers or teachers, right? But so then you're having to kind of help ground and maybe even reframe if there's too much info that has been, has overwhelmed your child. I think it's interesting too of how you then go on to parent And you're like, this informs how you parent to some, right? Like,
sure, yeah.
I mean, I had a similar experience to you growing up. Like, when no one was talking about, this and that, but I'm making a different decision with my kids, and my husband's totally from like a Berkeley, sherry emotional family. So like they know quite a bit about, so I'm not like the birds and the bees and stuff like that. But yeah, with climate, it's kind of interesting. We've had conversations in the car about like something which was up here. Like, I don't even know how they were tracking it, but they were, which just shows that kids are always paying attention and listening.
Yeah. I got that, like, I think I got this from Dan Siegel originally.
Oh, yeah. That's the window of tolerance guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't recall that term, but
yeah,
it's very much like push-pull dynamics and information sharing with kids too, where like they ask for it. Like, yeah, oh, do you want to know more about this? Or are you curious? But not just like treat them like an adult at the dinner table, and we share like everything terrible about the world so they can become little adults ahead of their time kind of thing, but also not hiding things, but also not trying to make them your peer or adult.
I know. I always what I do is skew towards generalizing. Like, you can be general. You don't have to share so much info. There's a war going on. I mean, it might not be appropriate to share with your child any more than, that. Yeah, there's a war going on. It's really sad. I mean, that's a lot right there. Yeah.
It is a lot right there. Yeah, I guess it's, what more is there? That's 70% of what they need to know, probably. Maybe some details. Like, are the details helping? Do you need to see the carnage or know how the modern weapons tear bodies apart? Like, do they need all that info?
No. I mean, and again, put yourself back there. Like, how would you have felt hearing all the details? And, I do hear from kids a lot that life is so complicated. There's just... I mean, parents, there's so much access to stuff, but we as parents can help with that, help them navigate it a little by not, maybe not increasing their information overload or sharing or oversharing about difficult, hard life truths.
Yeah, I remember I have a strong memory of being on a Boy Scout trip when I was probably like 10 or 11, maybe even like 9. And I remember the kid I was sharing a tent with was telling me about World War II. And all I remember him talking about is just like, and there's this guy Hitler, and he was pretty mean and whatever. I was like captivated by this. And like, I went home and started watching the History Channel. But like the level of understanding of that was like Hitler was mean, which not like that actually is probably 70% of what happened. Like, that dude was pathologically extremely toxic, to put it lightly.
But like, that was the general, right?
Yeah, for a 9-year-old, like, that was enough. Where I'm like, okay, now I can like trickle out from there, and that's fine. I didn't necessarily need I think anything more than that at that point might have been like, oh God, like the world does this to its members. Like, this is what happens. I don't know if that's an exact perfect fit, but 9-year-old brains kind of do work like that. Like, they're smarter than we think, but also maybe that's enough.
But they're not they can't maybe sift through things and they're not there. Their brains have not developed to the extent of our brains. So,
Ariella, thanks for letting me ask you questions basically to my benefit and to no one else's, unless they're me. I hope people listening can generalize out from my unique psychology. There's a lot of great advice here, and in the book too, about how to raise kids that are, like, properly adjusted in a climate changing world. Thanks for doing all of that work.
You're welcome, Ross. I hope it's helpful to people. I mean, that's why I wrote this book, was, to help support the Parent Club.
Great. And if people want to pick up a copy, it's everywhere, right? All the normal book places.
It is. And you can certainly order a copy from my website, ariellacookshankoff.com. And welcome to follow me on my social media or check out my Psychology Today blog as well.
The link to all of those things are in the show notes. Go check those out. Thanks for being here, Ariella.
Thank you again, Russ.
Every minute your finance team spends wrestling with data is a minute lost. Insight Software's AI-powered insights instantly move you from complexity to clarity. Automated analysis, real-time reporting, strategic recommendations, all at your fingertips. Transform how your finance team works and watch your business grow. Stop wasting time. Start making smarter decisions. Learn more at insightsoftware.com/AI.